Jimmy Doan Show.
And Jimmy Doan and Counselor Curtis.
That's me and that's him. We are here today. Today is the 21st of November 2018. Welcome to the show. We're streaming live on Facebook as we normally do twice a week these days at 4 p.m. So please join us.
Wednesdays and Sundays.
That's right. Hey, Gene, look at that already.
All right, you got into it.
So,
Tomorrow's Thanksgiving.
tomorrow's Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So what's happening?
Well, what's happening is actually today's a little bit of a special show.
Okay.
We got a communique
Yes, we did.
a week or two ago from a nephew.
Yes. Oh, you didn't have to give them away. It's family.
Family, right. And he wanted us to touch a little bit on Trump.
Yes.
And he said, here are some things that he had a problem with. I'm just
Right.
gonna
Now,
read-
I've got his question. You want me to read the question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so this is what he said. He said, "Hey, Curtis, I was hoping y'all could touch on the Trump phenomenon, how a bigoted, misogynistic adulterer, narcissist hijacked the Republican Party. Had BHO done 1/1000th of the shit 45 is done, there would be a civil war." And I asked him what specifically stuff he was talking about. He gave me a quick list, trying to cover up payments to the porn stars, lying about it, not addressing the Russian interference, using the presidency to gain wealth through the emoluments clause violations, so to speak. I'll talk about that. Perpetual lying on an everyday basis. The simple fact is that he embraces brutal dictators while trashing our allies, and for some reason, that's bad. That's all bad. So, I mean, not for some reason. I'm skipping stuff. And if he was beholden to Russia, he says, for financial or personal reasons, that would probably be the most shocking. So that's his list.
Okay.
So-
well, let me start off with the women. The misogynist.
The misogyny.
Okay, a misogynist is a person who hates women.
Correct.
So we want to go down here real quick and find out who is in the Trump, who's been appointed by Trump to various places in the administration. Of course,
Okay.
we start off with Nikki Haley. Of course, she's resigned, but she's going to probably be replaced by a woman also. Elaine Chao, Secretary of Transportation. Kirsten Nielsen, Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. Hope Hicks, who's also out, but she's going to be replaced. She was the White House Communications Director. Kellyanne Conway, Counselor. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who is brutal. I mean, she's really good. And Betsy DeVos, Secretary of Education. A lot of people don't like her for reasons. Linda McMahon, Administrator for the Small Business Administration. Dr. Heather Wilson, Secretary of the Air Force.
So you're arguing he's not misogynistic because they're putting all these women.
Exactly. And that list goes on. There's quite a few. The list is fairly long.
Okay.
And of course, the next thing he had was, women love him, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. I mean, maybe not all because of the way the election does, but trying to cover up payments to porn stars and lying about it. But of course, we knew all that before the election. Everybody knew all the stuff, the pussy grab and all the other stuff, the Stormy Daniels. That was all. Everybody knew that.
Yeah, but how can you ignore it is the question.
What happened is it was ignored. We know the guy. So what's the problem here? I mean, it has nothing to do with policy. The simple fact is, it has nothing to do with the war in Iraq or Syria. It has nothing to do with any of that stuff.
Well, that's kind of the way that I start. You know, when I approach the question, my first answer, I have like a 4-part answer.
Okay.
And that's like part 2 or 3. The first part is, whatever support we see for Trump may have simply been opposition to Hillary.
Right.
You know, it's still a binary system. We don't have ranked voting or anything, so it's very possible that the majority of the support was simply a vote against the other people. So no matter who it was, it could have been anybody as the Republican, and they would have gotten more support theoretically. I'm just saying under that theory. Okay. You have to take that into account. It's an oppositional thing potentially. The second thing is, you're talking about the reputation that he has versus the man that he is. That's the second thing that I think about is we have this image of him, and then there's a question of, is that really him? And then the third level is, even if that's him, does that have anything to do with policy he implements?
Right.
And I think, that is where there's a big disconnect between Democrats and Republicans. The people I talk to who are Democrats are like, look, he lies incessantly, he does all this crazy shit. He says stuff. He grabs women. Blah 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 blah. And the Republicans come back and say, well, and so what legislation did that result in?
Yeah.
What was the worst lie, for example, and how bad was it?
And well, the thing, what he also says on there is perpetual lying on an everyday basis. And of course, my question is, well, what lies exactly?
Well, right.
Show me the lies. Okay, now let me tell you something. It's very, something like the size of the inaugural crowd, but there's a huge difference between campaign rhetoric and the rhetoric that you use in a big supporters auditorium, that kind of thing, where people are cheering for you and you're playing to the audience. I mean, that kind of stuff is all exaggeration. It's, and you know what it is. I mean, coming in, it's not policy. It's just playing to the base. And to call it lying, of course, is. It's as I say, it's
a bit of a stretch.
It's a hyperbole.
I have to agree with you from the standpoint of, I think everybody can agree that what we hear on the campaign trail is pretty much lies by everyone.
Everybody, totally.
It's advertising is the way that I look at it.
And everybody knows that.
Well, I think everybody should know that.
Well, the fact is, one of the greatest little sayings that you say, how do you know when a politician is lying? It's when they open their mouth.
Right.
So, everybody knows that.
Right.
So anyway, but there's a huge difference.
And we could go back through, I've heard people talk about the lies of this president, but I mean, we go back through the past presidents.
All of them.
You can keep your doctor, WMD, I didn't have sex with that woman.
What I don't want to get into is a comparison.
Read my lips.
Yeah, I know. We look all that stuff.
Okay.
Well,
just a few.
That's
just the last 4
What I'm trying to do here is just to address the questions.
Yeah. Okay.
On the Trump currently, it is well known. A lot of this other stuff. So we don't have to talk about it or bring it up. That's that a particular argument is, well, everybody does it kind of thing.
Right. Well, I know that's
no good.
Yeah.
So there's a huge difference.
Whataboutism.
And press conferences, of course, are different from private deliberations in the Oval Office.
Well, right. This goes back to the trashing our allies and buddying up to the dictators. This, I think, anybody who sees that as an evil thing or a traitorous act is missing the game. That is showmanship right there. That is literally gamesmanship. That is
he wrote a book on it. Well, read his book.
Well, look, you don't have to read the book to know that if you have a friend and you want to get something from them, if they're an ally, but they're not your people, you're going to have to press them a little bit. This is what he's doing in terms of the NATO payments and the tariffs and things like that. This is pressure on the people who are around, and even though they're allies, and that's just what that is. And then conversely, he uses the attractive thing for Putin and for
Kim Jong-un.
Exactly. Yeah. He tries to say nice things about them and G and whatever. So to create the rapport first.
Right.
It's a back and forth game that he's playing.
That's right.
So
anyway, to continue on, the next thing he talked about was the not addressing the Russian interference in our elections. Well, that's been debunked so much. The thing is, he said that there's no collusion. Here's what Trump said: no collusion. He said it a dozen times. No collusion.
Well, he's addressed it.
It's not only that.
Okay.
I'm continuing on.
Yeah.
He has addressed it in so many times to begin with, and there's an ongoing detailed examination by Mueller.
Right.
Now, if something was going to come up, here's first of all, he denied collusion so many times that he would be strung up on perjury in no time flat. From all those times he's denied this, and Putin denied it also. And you say, well, they're all liars. Well, where's the proof? Where's the evidence? Not a shred of evidence.
It's like you just said. In terms of that particular determination, the jury is still out. In fact, the jury hasn't even been selected yet. There's been no charges filed because the investigation is still ongoing. And we won't know fully what's going on until the investigation is complete. I think we can all hold our breaths until that happens. In the meantime, if you look at the investigation in and of itself, one of Jim Carrey's objections to Trump in a short list was endless indictments. Well, so far, none of the indictments have concerned the election at all.
Right.
They're all about things decades or longer, older, and they're financial things. And this is all theoretically used to put pressure on whoever it is has the quote-unquote real information. We know, though, that Cohen, the guy who guards the skeletons in Trump's closet's already been in there spilling his guts everywhere. And now we're on year number 2 in the Trump presidency. One would imagine if Mueller were an effective prosecutor that he would start laying some cards down that were pretty effective pretty fast.
I would think so.
We'll see.
And or else, you can't do something like that without some leaks. I don't care who you are. So there'll be some little hint of a leak.
Look, I'm with you. I don't think they'll find anything because of the way that it's turned out to this point. However, let's just wait and see.
Well, we can do that, I suppose. But
he has addressed it
He
question.
totally has addressed it.
Yeah.
And as I say, it had no effect. Let's see, it has not produced a shred of evidence on the Russian thing. Apparently, it had no effect on the election. What really happened, the real interference was from the anti-Trump media, the press, the Democrats media, Facebook, Google, and Twitter, etc. CNN, MSNBC, AOL constantly ran opinion pieces and rumors posing as hard news.
But here's
Unless the Russians have taken over all the major news outlets, I think the MSM is far more damaging than any alleged Russian interference.
all right. And here's my ruling on all of that is the same. Everybody fuck off. It's information.
Well, they're not going to.
No. What I'm getting at is, if you think that this bad information is influencing people, get over it. It's bad information. That's what is out there. That bad information. It's like reading The Onion and then drawing up a false conclusion about the person you're going to vote for. There's bad information out there. You know that. You've been told. So you're on notice that if you read something about somebody that you have to go double check it somewhere. So the allegation about this Russian interference is that they were bots or something that were printing out advertisements that were bad about the other people. Well, we already know that all the candidates were putting out bad stuff about everybody. The fact that there's a group spending more money on it or buying ads in a particular place, or Facebook is rigging their system, it's all a wash. It's all completely a wash. That's why I say everybody go jump in a lake, because there's nothing to see here. It's just bad information.
The thing is, though, when you look at people that where they get their news from, so to speak, most people would just glom onto it. I mean, the rumors. I mean, as I say, what happens is you've got the talking heads that are like mind readers. They'll come out with something, and there'll be some rumor, and they will report it as news. And it's not news.
Yeah,
it's
but
a rumor.
I think everybody sees through that these days.
Really?
I do, yeah. I can't
don't.
imagine.
No, you don't. Let me tell you, it is. If you listen to Rachel Maddow, for instance, she, as far as she's concerned, and the guy on the Mike Pesca from Slate, these people are convinced that the juries come in and ruled on the Russian interference. Of course, it was Russian interference.
Yeah, but see, to me, that is Rachel Maddow is just like Joe Girl on Twitter. Like, there's nothing more legitimate than what she says than what my cousin Katie says.
Easy for you to say. She gets paid millions of dollars to say it.
Well, I realize that. And look, they're coming from a place where people such as her had these prime spots in a limited distribution environment through television. Well, that's over. Now everybody has distribution. So whatever they're going to say gets measured against whatever anybody else is going to say. And I think people can sort through it all. I think everybody has to. And that's just...
Well, again, but you can see from the results of the elections, they're not sorting through this stuff. You look at the people the platforms that they run on are virtually socialist, and they get elected.
Well, socialism's popular right now.
The most ignorant people on the planet can't let me put it this way: the smartest people in these that are running these can't see that Venezuela is going down the tank. I sent out a link today on this girl from Venezuela, very articulate, and she talked about what was wrong with socialism and so forth, and she was very articulate. It was like a 6.
I watched it.
I thought it was great. I thought it was fabulous. Anyway.
Well, keep going on Trump here.
Okay. Using the presidency to gain wealth, allegedly,
right?
The emoluments clause,
right,
which has never been used.
Well, okay, but what the allegation here is Trump has lots of properties. the Trump properties are involved in getting payments from government contracts.
I know what it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that, but good luck. I mean, the fact is, he said, I'm not doing it. He's already, rich, and of course, the other thing they're all been out of shape about is not showing his tax returns.
Right.
That's what my nephew said, was not showing his tax returns. And of course, the thing about it is, he was already rich, of course, before he ran for office. Now.
Well, their supposition is that he's only rich because he's been ripping people off for a long time.
Okay,
and the tax returns will show that, and that's just another one of his lies.
Okay, here's the deal. They've been investigating his tax return. The last one that they had published was in 2005. Okay, so for the last 13 or 14 years, he's been submitting tax returns to the IRS. Now, who are you going to believe? Are you going to believe the talking heads and the people who know how to read a teleprompter, or the tax specialists who go after the big money in the IRS? They have a feather in their cap if they can corral the big one. We got what's his name, the Jewish guy who what was his name?
Bernie Madoff.
Bernie Madoff, and they even got
Milliken.
Huh?
Milliken.
Milliken. Well, that was another thing. Insider trading. They also got
Martha Stewart.
Martha Stewart. I mean, give me a break. I mean, they're going after. Do you think for 2 seconds that they would not have had him perped out there, perp walked, frog walked, whatever you want to call it, if they had found something wrong with his $1 billion tax return?
Well, I have to agree with you there, and you can Google or Wikipedia the Trump lawsuits, and there's a bunch of lawsuits that have been filed. Look, he oversees a company. A multi-billion-dollar company with 500 different individual business entities within it. And like you said, there has not been any sort of large-scale criminal allegations or even civil stuff.
Out like they did with Milliken. They went into his office and perp walked him out in the middle of the day.
Right. The majority of the lawsuits seem to be from typical slip and fall type of things, like at his properties. In other words, typical lawsuits that you would face if you were anybody. There are some allegations of him ripping off people here and there, but nothing on a hugely large scale.
Again, if you're going to have certified CPA, advanced CPA people looking at your tax return from the IRS,
right,
who get a feather in their cap and a promotion, if they can find something wrong, they would have found it.
Well, okay, and there are people in New York State now allegedly investigating, for example, the valuation of his contributions to his children, and
investigate away.
Right. Well, I'm with you. And obviously, if they find something, then they find something.
That's
but
right. So far, right.
Nothing.
I mean, again, these are people that are experts in find. These are auditors, that are experts at forensic auditors that are experts at finding, not some talking head on TV who's reading a teleprompter. So,
what else they got?
Okay, let me just see here. Santa got that one there. Addressing Russian interference. Okay. All administrations have claimed to be the most transparent you'd ever see.
Right.
Okay. Here's a guy who tweets out 20 times a day exactly what he's thinking. It just doesn't get any more transparent than that. I mean, seriously. And you may not like it. It may be this, that, or the other. But I mean, the fact is that he is telling you 20 times, starting at 3 o'clock in the morning and going through, I don't know, tweets to everybody. And if you don't know what the guy's thinking, you're nuts. I mean, he's, I don't know how many followers he's got on Twitter, but he's got to be a couple of million.
That's
most transparent guy you've ever seen.
Most transparent president, I think you'd have to say.
There's no question.
At least since
others have
Andrew
lied, have lied through their teeth, and then it comes out later on that this was all done in secret and everything like that. It's just, I mean, to me, this is the new way to govern in a way. It's just funny. So anyway, what the deep state and establishment fear is the disruption of their cushy lifestyles as a result of the go along, get along mentality for decades. One of the things that nothing would have changed if either Hillary or Jeb or any of the other contestants would have won the presidency. Trump loves America and is beholden to no one, and that only strikes fear into the donor class. And those are the people that have, these are the people that get bribed, you know, the ones that ran before. But he's his own guy. I mean, so you may not like it, I understand that. And you may not like the tariffs, or you may not like the fact that he stirs up the pot and everything, but the people that are really upset about this are the people who did not expect there to be any major disruption in the overall scheme of things, and that is that all of the bureaucrats and everybody would still hold their jobs. And of course, what's happening is when you start to reduce the regulations, there's some firing going on there, and you know, people aren't happy about that. You live in Washington and you're getting paid $200,000 to be some low-level bureaucrat, and now all of a sudden you're out of a job.
Fired.
Yeah, that's right. And he says, and then in the end there he says, and the list goes on and on. Well, show me the list.
Well, I mean, I've seen little pieces of the list here and there, but again, to me, there's various levels of lying. I mean, obviously, if you lie about somebody's surprise birthday party, it's perfectly acceptable.
Right.
You know, advertising to me is a form of deception, if not, I mean, you can certainly say that it is. So every advertisement, and yet we accept that. Obviously, political ads, you know, and that's how he's a self-promoter. So you'd expect that, you know, to go on. When I hear things like misogyny, I think that's
over the top.
Well, I tell you what, it's inaccurate. What it is this: it's not misogyny. That's hatred of women.
Right.
What it is he likes women too much. He's a pervy guy. He's a handsy kind of guy. If anything, he's on the other side of that coin. And that's what they mistake. But those allegations haven't been around recently. Like the last one was like 10 or 15 years ago from the Miss America contestants. You know, he would walk through when they're changing and stuff like that. And but of all of those allegations, there have only been 16 people who complained that he was overly sexually, you know, inappropriate with them. Almost all of them came during the time when he was running for election.
Right.
A couple of them came before that. Two of them, I think, filed lawsuits. One of them settled her lawsuit because she had another lawsuit with him somewhere else. In other words, the women involved apparently didn't think that they were such big incidents. Otherwise, they would have sued the pants off of him.
So to speak.
So to speak. And when I hear, you know, I hear people were decrying his adultery. They were talking about that. And my thought is, well, that's between him and Melania. Nazi grammar. I knew you were going to give me on that.
Yeah.
But it's between him and Melania. If they're still together, that's up to him. You know, adultery used to be a crime. We had, you know, we'd string you up, whatever, send you to prison, whatever. And we realized, look, that's between the husband and wife. We don't get involved in that. If they're cool with it, it's cool. And, you know, I know you don't want to do whataboutism, but obviously if we look back through history, the differences between what Trump is accused of in terms of violating his marriage vows and what we've seen by past presidents it's nothing. There's no comparison.
No. Again, not seriously.
So
that's
you know, I
powerful. Look, here's the deal. Powerful people attract attractive women. This one of the things you always get to see on YouTube or something, or some of these things is you show this gorgeous girl and the husband. And do you think he's rich?
Right.
I mean, give me a
it's like
break.
some toad and some supermodel.
Seriously.
Well, and I don't think there's any objective analysis that can say that he's not a powerful person. The money, the wealth that he commands, by anybody's measure, is phenomenal.
Right.
I've heard people talk about he's an idiot or he's losing his mind or whatever. I think those things are just objectively false. I don't think you can call him ignorant, or you can say that he's ignorant, but you can't say he's unintelligent. You can say he's uninformed, but you cannot argue objectively that he's stupid, because it's just objectively clear that the amount of stuff that the guy can keep on his mind and deal with on a daily basis is large. And
he's telling everybody about it.
He's telling everybody about it. So
that's right.
I think that's you know, those things. And then I hear the accusation of bigotry, which obviously includes the racist, homophobic, sexist, normal array of stuff. And the incidents that they always point to are the time that he said Mexicans are rapists. If you go back and listen to that clip very carefully, it's very clear. He's talking about a portion of them. He doesn't say all of them. Okay, and I'm, as you know, I'm an everybody come on in amnesty guy, but I will also realistically point out to you that immigrants, when they come to this country, having come from a place of
Very strong government control.
well, or not. Basically, they commit more crimes than Americans. They just do. It happens. Trust me. On average, they commit far more crimes.
Really?
Because they're the have-nots. When they arrive, they're the have-nots. They come into where the haves are. There's a lot more theft that goes on, a lot more robbery, a lot more violent crime, a lot of stuff. You know, after the wave of
that.
I
thought there was a study that said they actually did fewer crimes.
No way. I deny that, but Google it if you want.
Yeah.
But that's my position is that's what he was referring to, and that's not a racist thing. That's just the facts on the ground.
Well, of course, then they point to the banning of the flights from the Muslim countries as a Muslim is not a race.
As a xenophobic thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's that's an us first kind of a thing, or
he makes it crystal. He makes it crystal clear. America first. And that's the other thing is that when he goes out and on some of this other stuff, as far as he's concerned, he loves America and he's putting it first.
I know.
And to the detriment of people who think that you can't be you can't put America first, you got to put these other people first or something. You know, when they come in here, they're first in line. They got the DACA people, whatever it is.
Well, I think this was just a reaction to people are a little bit worried. Is he attacking a religion? And I think he was just painting with a broad brush at that point because it was somewhat of an emergency from his position. He is in charge of national security. Mm-hmm. If there's one thing that he's in charge of, it's national security. So. When you look at the stuff.
The other thing that's interesting is we're having at least two people that are going to be in the Congress next year that are swearing their allegiance on the Koran.
No, that's fine. The Koran's a fine document. We can talk about it different time. I'll tell you all about it.
All right.
Read the whole thing.
I know you did.
But here's what I wanted to say is, and again, this is whataboutism, but when you compare Trump's reaction to past people, like FDR interred hundreds of thousands of Japanese Americans.
Gold. Yeah, right, Americans.
Put them in prison camp, basically.
Yeah.
So when you want to talk about the reaction to a bad situation, I think you have to take into account that. When I hear stuff like when they talk, the claims of racism go back to the 1970s when there were suits by the Equal Opportunity Commission against Trump's dad for failure to rent to black people. They sent in some people and busted them doing that, and they had to make payments and stuff. But here's the thing, that was the 1970s. And he's been running all these companies for all this time, 500 companies. There's a lot of people who hate Trump. I think if, like you said, the knives are out. If he had a systematic practice of discriminating against women, blacks, minorities,
foreigners,
LGBTQ, every religions, anything, those people would have organized a campaign of civil grievance and assault, a civil case against him, and they would.
Well, because those people that you just mentioned are protected classes.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And have been since then.
30, 40 years.
Exactly. And he's been running this stuff, and you have not seen that throughout the history of his companies. So I think that that's a lot of evidence that no matter what the image of him is, that in reality, combined with the appointments you were talking about, he doesn't treat those people differently.
Yeah.
So...
No, he'll fire any of them.
Right. At least that's the perception on the Republican side, Chad.
Well, again...
we're not...
But the other thing, though, that you see is this torrent of, and he called it fake news, but you can say what you want, but when you go to some places like the MSNBC and these places, and as I say, they're rumors and theories that they purport as news.
Yeah, look, I reported on one a couple weeks ago where CNN did a thing, Jake Tapper did a thing where he reported that Trump was guilty of colluding with the Russians because he made a speech during his campaign at the University of Miami, during which he said, very subtly, Russia, if you're listening, I hope you do something about I hope you have the Hillary emails. And then Russia, this is what Jake Tapper reported, that day broke into the DNC email. In other words, they were listening and responding to the campaign speech. All right. Now, if that doesn't sound like aliens landed on the moon to you, I don't know what does. And so, to me, you
This
only.
was lost in translation. We had this. We
We are here.
So now we
Vladimir, we have received communication from Trump.
communication, secret from Trump.
That's right. Right. Please break in, hack now.
Okay.
Commence hacking. No, that's not what happened, and you can't. It's so. That, you know, you're right that he has faced that and does continue to face that. Let me just double check real quick that we've covered everything before we get off the Trump situation, because there was a lot in there. I had a list from Jim Carrey. We talked about kidnapped children, and then talking about the border situation. I think everybody can recognize that every president has done exactly the same thing up till now. And you can criticize the policy today, but it's certainly not Trump's policy, or wasn't put in place by him. And of course, it's housing. We're talking about housing families together, which we have never done ever in the history of our criminal defense universe. We just don't do that. If a family gets arrested, the kids and the parents get separated. You know, if they come in and bust a family for whatever, that's what happens.
Right.
And so, you know, we can talk about creating family housing in jails. But that seems.
Yeah. God, can you imagine? And of course, can you imagine how long that would last? If you're in a jail cell, 12 by 12 or wherever it might be,
With your kid.
with your kids and your wife, and the bar's there, and
Everybody's dead. I don't know what happened.
and there's a
2 minutes
communal
later.
toilet in there. Well,
Right, yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Yes, okay.
Yeah,
How long would that last?
I don't think that's it. Let's see. Dun, dun, dun. I think we go. Oh, and just real quick, top 2 things Trump has done. Worst 2 things you think he's done?
Me?
Yeah. I mean, when I think of the top 2 things, or the potentially worst 2 things, I think of the tariffs.
Okay.
And I think the jury's still out on those. If he uses them to lower tariffs overall, it'll be good. If he keeps them on indefinitely or ends up pounding in the United States with them, then they'll be detrimental. And then the second thing is he's continued the spending. He's
Yes.
continued the Obama-Bush era spending.
Right.
The spending is off the rails.
Yeah, it is.
And this is, to me, when I think about Trump, I think the Democrats can take hope from another aspect of the whole administration thing. If you really think Trump is off his rocker, crazy, or off whatever, out of control, remember one thing: he's just one guy, and he has to delegate most of his responsibility. And the other people are really in charge. I mean, they're even delegating and delegating down further. So the people who are actually implementing the policy are several layers removed from President Trump. And that's an insulation factor if you really think Trump is crazy.
Yeah.
The administration is going to continue to act, as people have talked about, sort of on its own. When shoot, I lost where I was going with that.
Yeah, I lost my train of thought. I was going to tell you something about that. The fact is that Trump. Oh, and this goes into the past again. I'm going to tell you, but it was interesting that 2 years now. Remember, now he hasn't been president yet for 2 years.
It's coming up on 2.
I know, but I'm still far. He's still a month shy of 2 years.
Okay.
But Reagan, who was elected in '80. In 1982, we were in the depths of the worst depression, they said, since the Great Depression.
Mm-hmm.
By 2 years later, at the end of that particular thing, that's when he won the landslide by 49 states or whatever it was, because the economy had taken off.
Right.
So now
We could see the reverse of that in this situation.
well, you know, again, I don't know. The fact is that when we're talking all this horrible things for 2 years, as you say, let's wait until the end. Although it's interesting to see that the race for the White House has already, garnered, I don't know, 24 people.
Sure. The other thing, what I was going to say, the best 2 things he's done, from my perspective, and I don't know if this is, I don't know how good this is, because it seems like shuffling the chairs on the Titanic deck, but the tax cuts.
Okay.
There are people who say that the tax cuts have benefited the economy. The economy is doing still better. So maybe it has, I don't know, it's hard to say. I think tax cuts would be good if they were not revenue neutral. I think if they were,
Right. If you really
they cut the spending and taxes, I think you'd see some real results. But I don't think that's what happened.
No.
Second is, and this is something, I think Trump's been listening to the show because we talked about last week, the big deal is going to be in the next election, Florida, potentially switching to a blue state because of the reinstatement of 1.5 million people's civil rights who were previously convicted felons who will now be able to vote. Florida may swing blue in a big way. Well, what happened? Last week, at our suggestion, Trump initiates criminal justice reform.
Yes.
And this is now going into the Senate to see what they're going to do to it. But if it comes out in substantial form, this to me will be the biggest positive thing that he has done in the administration. And I think it will get through because this is the kind of thing that has bipartisan support.
Right.
Once it goes to the House, the Democrats should be willing to get this through it. Yeah, so we'll talk about the specifics when it starts to get a little bit more hacked up in committee and such.
So we'll maybe with the felons free to vote, the state will swing totally red.
You mean totally blue? With this?
No. They're gonna worship Trump.
Oh, right. 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 Yeah. So, all right. Well, so that's pretty much it. Oh, and the final thing that I had on Trump has to do with this week, which is that people are down on Trump right now for not punishing the Saudis for the murder of Khashoggi, and of course, the murderers of Khashoggi are going to be murdered for murdering his murder. You know, not for the actual murder, but for murdering the murder.
Right.
They're going to get murdered. But my first thought is we're about to murder Assange.
Right.
I mean, people ought to get off their freaking horse and save his ass before saying anything about it. And then again, this is as tragic as it is. This is one guy. They're lopping people's heads off all the time over there. We look the other way all the time for their civil rights violations, and it's a huge integrated part of our economy right now. Still, they sell us oil a lot cheaper than we can get it over here.
Pretty much all of the prices really dropped recently.
It's
really
changing. It's
changes
changing
daily.
a lot.
Well, the thing is, though, that is Scott Adams said he had a really good take on this. On his Periscope that he does, at least once a day. And what he said was...
Hey, Scott, there's your plug.
Yeah, there's your plug. And he has this really great thing when I have an alert on my Twitter feed or whatever that when he goes on. Coffee with Scott Adams. So anyway, the deal is this. He says, if you think for 2 seconds that Trump doesn't know or doesn't understand exactly what happened over there. He's the only one that, he's the president of the United States. He knows precisely what happened.
Oh, of course. Well, everybody does.
And so the fact that he has decided, as Scott would say, to keep his options open. What he said is, that we're gonna move more on this and so forth. And what he's realized is that on balance, yes, it's terrible, but it's a journalist, but they murder people all the time, and the fact is they're getting ready to buy billions of dollars worth of stuff from us, and so
sounds horrible, but this is reality. This is
reality, right? This is the reality. I mean, you can. There's a time when you can cut off your nose, you cut off your head despite your neck or something.
Seriously,
and that's
like 27 people died in Chicago last night.
Yeah.
All right. What else we got?
Okay, let's see. Oh, well, speaking of Trump again, they're going to fully restore Jim Acosta's White House credentials.
Yes, I noticed that. Again, he was listening to the show. We told him, don't fight it, man. Get him back in there.
Yep, he get in there. Now he got new rules, though.
Sure.
And the new rules are, I believe, that they're going to have the intern girl hold the microphone.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and you're not allowed to touch her.
Right.
Or whatever it is, and you're allowed to ask one question.
Right.
Which is, it's a little disappointing because one of the big deals was years ago when they got the ability to do a follow-up question.
Right.
And if they're going to eliminate that, that's going to.
Well, they said at the president's discretion.
Right.
So the problem is that they all abused the crap out of it.
Oh,
I mean, the follow-up question, it was like, I'm going to ask my first question in 3 parts, and
Yeah.
then my second question. It's like, come
Well,
on,
this
man.
is what Mike Pesca said when he was talking about the fact that the day that and he's from the Slate magazine. He's got his podcast called The Gist, but as he pointed out, the 4 or 5 questioners that had gone before Acosta had done just that. 4 or 5 questions, dovetail, and they were not chagrined or shot. But what he seemed to think was Trump was waiting, to spring the trap on
Yeah,
Acosta.
right.
But, okay, well, whatever. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, we'll see how it goes from here.
Yeah. So the White House letter sent to Acosta Monday, what's today, Wednesday, makes it clear his credentials could be threatened again, stressing new rules for press conferences, limiting each reporter to a single question with follow-ups at the discretion of the president. Right. Let's just see here. We've got another book coming out on Trump, which is interesting. Oh, this is another thing. Our Pam Bondi. Let me just see here. Hold on a second. Oh, here's another thing. Big scandal. Big scandal. Democrats intend to probe Ivanka Trump's use of personal email in the next Congress. Here it goes again. The Nunes or whoever it was, and the other guy Trey Gowdy or whatever it was, the guy that was doing the investigation of Benghazi and the the Hillary emails and went on and on and on and everything. And so now the Democrats said, well, revenge time, and what we're going to do is we found out that Ivanka, the daughter there, has use of personal email. Amid reports that the first daughter and White House senior advisor Ivanka Trump exchanged hundreds of official government business emails using a personal email account, the Democrats on Capitol Hill want to know if Ivanka, complied with the law. In the next Congress, they plan to continue their investigation of the Presidential Records Act and so forth. And they are, it's the guy that's going to, I think, do it is this guy Elijah Cummings from Maryland. And he's made it crystal clear that this is going to be, they're going to find the truth on that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, no shame going after the president's daughter there.
Yeah. Right.
But to me, when I hear this, my first thought is I didn't care about the Hillary emails. So I'm sure it's people who really were pissed off about that on the opposite side.
Right.
But the difference to me is Ivanka's position is what now?
Yeah. None.
No, she does actually have an official
No,
position.
that's right. She's an advisor.
Right, but the point is that this is like the most, it's unpaid.
Right.
This is like the most minor position, and they put her in the position in order to get her under the Federal Information Compliance Act.
Right.
In other words, I mean, it almost looks like a little setup, but either way, I can't imagine that she had anything like the kind of emails that Secretary of State was passing around. But
Well,
either way,
not only that, they certainly weren't. You can't imagine that they were anything classified.
that's what I'm talking about.
Number 2, erasures, none, 0, none. When somebody apparently went to her at some point and said, "Hey, you're under the Records Act now," and so about
Tell
that.
me this is a non-story.
Yeah, no. Well, they're going to make it a story. That's the whole
They can
point.
try. We'll
This
see.
is what. Yeah.
She's not. Again, she's not the Secretary of State or a high-ranking official. She is the president's daughter. So
Yeah.
it's like come on.
Well, so anyway, that's what Cummings is going to do, and we're going to focus on the impact that Americans in their everyday lives. So good luck on that. Okay, another thing. Let me just talk here about the little PC business, the vagina monologues. Now, there was a play that came out quite some time ago, and it had to do as a feminist type thing. I forget exactly what it was. Once a cutting-edge cry of feminist liberation is heading into the campus forbidden zone because it excludes women who don't have vaginas. So they canceled it because it excludes women who don't.
It's anti-women.
Well, I don't know, but
It's anti-men.
who are the women that don't have vaginas? I was watching last night Birdcage, and which is really a hysterical movie. I mean, it really is, and they refer to Nathan Lane as her all the time, and it's just hysterical. So the Women's Resource Center at Eastern Michigan University just stopped productions of Eve of the 1994 for its lack of trans sensitivity, as well as supposed overall lack of diversity and inclusion. Groups at American University and Mount Holyoke College have already adopted similar bans, and this is the logic, of course, of the modern university. Okay, next item that is a kind of a big deal. Let me move along here. Crypto devastation forces miners to literally dump their mining rigs. Literally, they showed a picture because apparently one of the big places that they were doing the mining. You know how it works on Bitcoin. Is you can. And actually, it was a lot easier. 2010. Because you could run your regular old rotten old 5 megahertz PC and collect bitcoins.
Can't do that anymore?
No, you can't. The problem is, as the number of bitcoins goes down, it's just like mining gold. I mean,
Right.
you
It
get
gets
the easy
harder and
stuff
harder.
first, it
Yeah.
gets harder and harder. And so what they were doing is they were having these giant, with the graphics cards or the gaming cards, that
Super
were
fast computer.
super fast. I mean, pumped up, water cooled, everything like that to mine, and it would still take a couple of days. So they were figuring out the amount of electricity
Yeah,
involved.
and electricity.
And electricity was involved in firing these things up to collect one Bitcoin. Well, it's one thing if the Bitcoin's worth 20 grand, but it's worth under 4,500 now. So they literally are taking these ultra fast, specialized mining machines, and I saw a picture of them all stacked up, thrown out the window at some place in China.
Why don't they wait about 2 weeks? And, the volatility of those things.
Again, I don't know.
Could change around. It all went in a month. It went from 4,500 to 20,000 last year.
Yeah.
So
Right. Well, anyway, who knows? So anyway, they've tumbled to 42.37, a 13-month low. It's interesting. Before beginning some support in the afternoon, so forth, so on. According to CoinMarketCap, whatever, digital assets have lost approximately $700 billion in market value since the peak last year in December. Can you imagine? 11 months ago, the peak. So that's those who have bitcoins. Let's hope you got them in 2010 and 2013 and so forth when we got them at $300 each or
Right,
something.
yeah.
Okay, next item. Trump says, this is interesting. Trump says oil prices would go through the roof if we broke with Saudi Arabia, and he wants lower rates. Echoing previous remarks, Trump started by saying he would like to see lower oil prices and interest rates. Well, no. The oil prices have already started to tank.
you skipped the Florida story,
I did?
didn't you?
Which one?
The one about you were saying Pam Bondi was going to sue the
Yes.
thing that you skipped. You skipped that one.
I skipped that one. Hold on. What did I do? Oh, yes. Okay. I did. I skipped. I'll have to come back to the Trump. Unfortunately, not market oriented. He wants lower interest rates, which are stupid, and lower oil prices, which the market will figure that out anyway. I'm not worried about it. But Florida, Pam Bondi, the Fox Pam Bondi, who's kind of a little bit of a Nazi.
Hey, let me fire up the transporter.
Okay.
Bring us down to Sandy, Florida here. Sandy Beach. And just like surfing on pipeline.
There we go.
Bammo!
Where the hell am I?
Oh, I said pipeline right at the last second, and it's sand, and it looks like you're in Saudi Arabia.
Thank you.
I'm in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah, I can see that. Anyway, Pam Bondi has sued Walgreens, CVS, alleging that they added to the state and national opioid crisis by overselling painkillers and not taking prescriptions to stop precautions to stop illegal sales. Attorney General Pam Bondi announced late Friday that she has added the companies to a state court lawsuit filed last spring against Purdue Pharma, the maker of OxyContin, and several opioid distributors. Bondi said in a press conference that CVS and Walgreens played a role in creating the opioid crisis. She said the companies failed to stop suspicious orders of opiates and dispensed unreasonable quantities and so forth from their pharmacies. On average, about 45 people die nationally because of overdoses. Now, the thing about this is, I think this is a grandstandy thing of Pam. She wants to be higher up in the administration kind of thing. She's kind of attractive, but I think she's a bit of a, no, I won't call her a Nazi or anything, but she really is going pretty hard after this.
Prosecutor.
Yeah, she's a prosecutor, right? And she's going to prosecute. And I think this is without merit. I'm pretty sure that when you go into CVS, I mean, even now, when I go to CVS to get my lung prescriptions or whatever, which are harmless, but you have to get a 90-day maximum supply. I have to get authorization to, for the refills from the doctor. And this is stuff that basically is pretty benign, but it's by prescription only. And I got to think that if you walked in, and I know that when I'd hurt myself one time before, they wanted to give me some OxyContin or something like that. I can't remember, but I had a maximum of like 10 pills, and that was it.
Yeah, and I'll say, if you get a cold and you want to get some Sudafed and you go into the CVS around here, they take your ID and they double check, and they have a system which, if you have gone to the CVS right down the road, it pings your car, your ID, and says you just bought some Oxy. It's like a centralized database.
Right.
And it's quite effective. I know because I defended some people, involved in it. But the bottom line is that obviously CVS, Walgreens, these people have taken massive steps to
Yes.
curtail the dispensing of.
I mean, even to the point where it hurts people.
Well,
I mean, if you have to go and show your ID and everything just to get some Sudafed,
Yeah.
which until a couple of years ago you could just scarf it off the shelf,
Yeah.
and now all of a sudden it's a dangerous chemical. It's not a Schedule 1 or anything, but geez, give me a break.
yeah, I'm libertarian. I'm for free access.
Yeah,
from my
totally.
perspective, these are adults. You let
Well,
them,
I think this is
freedom, absolute freedom of ingestion. The closer the thing is to you, the closer the law should be regulated, and body stuff is like personal regulation as far as
Yeah.
I'm concerned.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Okay, this is interesting. Colorado State may not be high on your list of trend-setting institutions, but anyone who follows political correctness battles is well aware of it. To use just one example, the quote, Director of Diversity and Inclusion at Associated Students of Colorado State University, that's the title. Yes, that's a thing. Recently said
Yes, that's a thing.
recently said that students should not use the phrase "long time no see" because it offends.
Come on,
it's
man.
it's offensive to Asians. It sounds too Chinese. No, a long time no see. So, but I don't. I mean, in Japanese it'd be "wrong time no see." So I don't know, but it's. The point is, I mean, this also comes along on the thing of another person said that the professor should not use all caps
Right.
when they give out orders and so, I mean, on the emails and so forth, because it's offensive. It's loud. It's too
Right,
loud.
right.
And of course, this also comes along with the jazz clamping. They use this downtown here. You cannot if somebody says something in the meeting, and people used to applaud. And in order to keep it down, now you have to do this. That's clapping. That's the equivalent of clapping. No, you didn't know that?
No.
Yep, it's true, and the people do that. I mean, you'll see them down there when you watch the video of the city council or something like that, city commission, and then somebody will say something, and they'll start to clap, and all of a sudden all the hands will go up and start to do this, and that's supposedly the equivalent of clapping. No, it's not. Give me a break. So I think it's kind of interesting. Anyway,
Do the hokey pokey.
yeah. Okay, the next thing I've got is marijuana. This is an interesting thing. Marijuana has been legal in Canada for a month. But immigration lawyers and cannabis executives say that when it comes to getting into the United States, the worst may be yet to come. And as Canadians get used to the fact that cannabis is no longer against the law in their country, some experts, the old experts trick, will say they will forget the perils that past and present marijuana use still poses for those seeking to come into the U.S. The Toronto-based immigration lawyer says he's bracing for a spike in cases of people who end up being banned outright. If you come across the border smelling of marijuana, or you have some on you, you can be turned around and had your name on the "Don't Ever Come Back" list. So they have made it clear to anyone.
The dangerous pot smokers.
Boy, I'll tell you, they have at the border control now that says you are now entering the United States, and then there's a marijuana leaf with a line through it, slashed. No do that. So anyone who admits to using marijuana prior to October 17th, the day that it became legal in Canada, could be banned from entering the country. Now, of course, who would admit to it? I mean, if you're going to be asked a question like that, have you used marijuana any in the last 2 years? And you go, shut up.
Yeah, no, everybody opens their pie hole right then.
I mean,
They
really?
go, yes, I mean, no. It's awful. But yeah, they'll get a lot of people on that, especially if they're high. But interestingly, 78 million Americans live in places where their recreational marijuana is
Right.
available now. 78 million Americans.
Well, what's
Huge
interesting
number.
is if you, I wonder, of course, that's because that's a federal law. This marijuana is still against the law federally.
Correct.
So that even if North Dakota, legalizes recreational
You
marijuana,
still gotta go through the
still
federal
got to go
court.
through the
Right.
feds right there.
Right.
You got 18 feet.
Right. You can just get right over
if
there.
I could just jump this.
That's right. Yeah.
I'd be all
And that's
right.
what they'll do. They'll be throwing it over or carrying it over in drones or something. You can still
Well,
get
of course,
across
if it's
it in a
legal,
boat
you
in the
might
lake.
as well you might as well not bring it. You just go buy it.
Well, that's true too.
I
Yeah.
mean, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and of course, what'll happen is it won't be long. It'll sweep through the rest of the states. 32 states at this point have decriminalized it, at least for medical purposes. When it went illegal, it did the same exact route. It started in California, went state by state until it swept through the nation. Where on the other route, we've already got Eastern Seaboard places like Boston now recreational, DC, although they haven't set up any things yet, and New Hampshire, and then we will
Yeah,
see.
now New Hampshire. Does New Hampshire have a border with Canada?
I think so.
Yes, it does, because that's where Mark Stein is from. He says he lives right next to Canada. You know, he's Canadian.
Okay.
He substitutes for Rush every
Okay.
once in a while. He's really good. He's really good.
Yeah, I've heard him before.
But anyway, he says he's in apparently, literally, as he said, a stone's throw from Canada, and of course he's a Canadian citizen, I think still, not sure, and he's from Canada. Maybe he's an American citizen. I don't know.
So it won't be long. Anyway, what's next?
I think. Oh, bad news tomorrow. Bad news.
Bad news.
It's going to be cold.
It's gonna be.
It's going to be
cold.
anywhere from 20 to 30 degrees below normal.
Yikes!
It's going to huge cold front sweeping through the northeast area.
It's the global warming.
Yeah, global climate change, right? And it's changing, all right. It'll be changing. But what they're worried about, of course, is the Thanksgiving Day parade, which has not been banned for decades, because if the wind gets over 23 miles an hour or something, they can't hold the balloons. So they're forecasting 1 mile or 1.5 kilometers per hour under the whatever the wind is, and what'll be interesting is to watch the people holding the balloons as they drift up
Float
in the air.
off into Canada. Yeah. Well, cold and interesting. I did hear a theory that was, it's cold because the overall Earth warming has sucked moisture out of the air and has allowed the coldness to come down. So now it's responsible for the weather extremes. Of course, I have just 2 words for people who are into changing the climate or changing the energy policy in a big way. And that just 2 words: fusion.
Yeah. Okay. And of course that's the thing. It's in binary. I can count to 10. 1-0.
That's right. Didn't you have a story about Apple?
Yes, I did. As a matter of fact, I did. I'm an Apple nut job.
No.
Yeah, totally. I've been an Apple nut job since you were just a mere child. No, it was. I had my first Apple II, in the late '70s, and have never looked back. So Apple CEO.
Let me transport us to the center of the Apple universe.
Okay.
This is the fabulous new Apple campus, of course, and we are there.
Okay. Excuse
And,
me. What am I, under an
oh.
apple tree?
Oh yeah, well,
I'm in the Newton universe.
you're kind of in the center of an Apple universe there.
Thank you so much. So anyway, Apple CEO Tim Cook calls new regulations inevitable. Now this is one of those things that we've talked about before, that about the time they start to regulate this stuff, and there was a big op-ed piece in the Gainesville Sun, I think yesterday, about it's time to regulate Facebook. No, it's not. I mean, the Cupertino, California, Apple CEO Tim Cook says tech companies don't build products that are inherently good or bad, but should be aware that their products can be used for evil. So can an axe, for God's sakes. You know, I mean, so can a shovel. I don't get it. So
Well, that's the nature of anything.
anything,
Right.
Really,
Literally.
So what he's saying, generally speaking,
Not figuratively.
he says, generally speaking, I'm not a big fan of regulation, but and I'm a believer in the free market, but we have to admit that when the free market is not working,
When it ain't working,
and it ain't working, I think
and
it's
ain't gotta be free no more.
That's right, and it's not going to be free, no. And what's fascinating about this is a group of people in Washington, let's say, if they're in the regulatory people, half a dozen or a committee or something like that, are smarter than the market. Smarter than 7 billion people on the planet. They can devise just the right exact amount of regulation that will free up everything.
Yeah. What's impossible about that is that those 7 sane people, are actually part of the market.
Right.
So they can't be smarter than themselves plus everybody else.
Right. That's number one. And number two, the market changes nanosecond by nanosecond.
Well, that's the other thing about the market. Myriad decisions are made by people every day that fluctuate. Things like particular tastes, like what I want for breakfast, or what kind of bed I like to sleep on, or anything that's personal is
there was
market
a
decision.
There was a big bang where Sheldon goes in and says, "I'm feeling good today," and he says, "I think I'll have a Rice Krispies or something," and then what's her name comes in, Penny comes in and says something, and he says, "Ooh, there it goes, high fiber day it is." So just that quickly, whatever it was, he switched the cereal box from one side to the other. And this is it. I mean, people have, and of course, what you're going to see this on day after tomorrow, or not day after tomorrow, day after tomorrow, is the impulse shopping from hell on Black Friday. I mean, people are going to go through the store, and you know that they are going to spend. They're not going to go in there with a list. They're going to be. They will change their minds as they walk down the aisle.
No.
Yes, exactly true. So this is what is stunning: is that these people actually think that they're smarter than the market, and the gall. I mean, the hubris, the arrogance of this is mind-boggling. And you see what happens is when they make this regulation. Even when it totally fails, when it backfires 100%, they have no skin in the game. There's no accountability. When a capitalist,
So they did the right thing.
Yeah, right. We were thinking the right thing.
Right.
We're pretty much thinking the right thing.
Do we know what the regulations are they're talking about?
No, they don't. They don't know. No, don't have any idea yet. Mm-hmm. But that's where the scary part is. They're going to start sitting around a room, pull, as they say, an all-nighter of coffee and everything like that, and say, "What shall we do? Well, how about this? No. How about that?" And then they'll draft, 40 pages or 50 pages of regulations.
Right. And what people should remember is that it's impossible to regulate a thing. Like, you don't regulate guns or computers or anything.
You regulate people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You always regulate people's ability to have access to that thing or their use of that thing. So the question is, who are they regulating?
Right.
Not what.
And of course, who's doing the regulating?
Well,
remember the regulatory people, now, have guns.
Right.
So if you don't go along with the regulations, eventually somebody with a badge is
sure to.
A badge and a sidearm is going to show up dressed in Kevlar and a badge. So that's, Cook argued the tech company should embrace the coming regulations. No, they shouldn't. They are.
Well,
one of the things that happened is the tech companies, Google and those people, now have presence in Washington. Mm-hmm. And what they're probably going to do is
get their hands in the regulations.
Exactly. No, hard to believe.
Make it difficult for their competition to rise up.
No. Why would they do that? Yeah, no. Why would they do that? It is. And you think about it, Apple is up until, I guess still is, maybe the largest company on the planet or something, $1 trillion. I mean, these guys have got money to burn as far as going into the regulatory outfits. I mean, they could spend $1 billion, $2 billion on
everybody has to have an iPhone.
That's right.
It's regulation.
Regulation, that's right. So anyway, then he also said, while acknowledging the male-dominated culture. Cook said that tech generation has been strong on diversity, and is encouraged at this point that there will be a marked improvement over time. I agree 100% from a gender point of view that the Valley has missed it, and tech in general has missed it. And so what? I mean, the simple fact is that there's plenty of women, girls, whatever, and I know some of them that are brilliant in tech. There's I don't know, half a dozen that go to the Apple II Fest or whatever it is in Kansas City, and they're really brilliant. And but out of 120 people, the rest of them are all guys, and they're the geeks. You know, how many? You just don't find many girl geeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Jordan Peterson evidence these days is points to the concept that guys are more interested in things, women more interested in people.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, even though there's a huge overlap.
I mean, go ahead.
So you're just going to get that kind of distribution. You're not going to convince me that these tech companies who are competing against one another are not going to hire who they think are the best people for the job, regardless of gender, religion, sex, anything.
Right.
Because I mean, that's I just have to believe if you're running a successful company, you got to hire the best people.
Well, that's the other thing that somebody once said. You know, the women are getting paid 72 cents or whatever it is for a man. Why wouldn't you hire all women? I mean, give me a break. If you could cut your employment costs, which are big, by 25%, why? I'm in. You know,
Yeah.
and obviously the problem is finding the super qualified individuals. I mean, personally, if it were Donald Trump, you'd hire all women. So. No,
Yep.
anyway, but he's really making a mistake, and that's too bad. As much as I love the Apple products, I'm not real crazy about Tim Cook anymore.
Yeah. Well, he's no Steve Jobs. What can you say? All right. I think that's about it. We're
We're a little over an hour.
a little over time. So thanks everybody for joining us. And
Tell your friends and give us a like someplace.
yep.
And don't forget the comments. I'll read all the comments.
Yeah. Jimmy will go back and get those. Special thanks out to Matt's Blues, to Kevin MacLeod. This is his music that you're listening to right now. We like it. And come back and see us again at 4 p.m. on Sunday, right here on this channel. We should be here. So we will see ya.
You don't have a list of who was on.
Yeah, here, let's see here. We had, look, Chad. Chad showed up, and Gregory Matthews, and Uncle John, and Cousin Tiffany, and Robert. Thanks, y'all. We really appreciate it. And like I said, one of us will get on the questions here. So, all right. See you soon.